Hello and welcome. You are watching the main class of Addis program with me, your host Adwa. In our today's program, we will be staying with the renowned Ethiopian professor, Professor Ayele Bakari, to stay with us. Professor, welcome to our program.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
I really appreciate for being with us.
Thank
you
you.
very much. Let me give you some chance if you want to talk about your background. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
It's in brief from the horse's mouth with Professor Ayele Bakari to our audience.
No problem. My name is Ayele Bakare, and at the moment I'm at Military War College, Ethiopian Military War College, and I'm a researcher and a professor there. Well, I'm a product of a whole series of long experience, academic experience, and of course, I first graduated from Alama University. Now it's called Horomaya, I think Horomaya University. And then immediately after that, I went to the US, and I think I spent over 30 years in the United States, mostly in a university environment, getting 2 masters and 1 PhD, and teaching at Cornell University for 14 years.
Wow. So great. So you are so experienced.
Well, very much so. That's why I said my life is academic life.
Wow. I really appreciate and give due credit to your academic background. And we are glad to have you as our guest here.
Thank you.
So let me dive to the first question. What were the key factors that led to the Battle of Adwa between Ethiopia and Italy? Let's just begin with the factors.
Yeah, the key factors, I think the key factors are related to age of imperialism, age of empire, in which Europeans were in the process of colonizing virtually the whole world. And then Africa was one of their major victims. And so in the process of colonizing Africa, and Italy, based on the 1884-85 Berlin Conference, and then of course first a claim that they were there first, like for instance purchasing Assab port. That was how they initiated their whole colonization ambition. And so based on that, they wanted to colonize all the countries in the Horn of Africa. And then, of course, since the Europeans were not together in this process of colonization, they were, fighting each other. And so, therefore, part of the region went to England, and then to France, and then, of course, whatever remained went to Italy. And so therefore it is precisely because of their desire to colonize the region that resulted in the Ethiopians' decision to not to be colonized, and therefore decided ultimately, when the diplomatic efforts didn't work out, they decided to defend themselves. They decided to defend their freedom. They decided not to be colonized. And so that was one of the reasons for the war to take place in Adwa.
Good. Let's come to the Zen leaders, Emperor Menelik II and Empress Tai to battle of his wife. How did they prepare Ethiopia for the war? What was their preparation?
That's an excellent question, because ultimately in military, the key factor is preparation. Preparation means in terms of logistics. Preparation means in terms of having the right weapons to fight with. Preparation means a kind of leadership that is accepted and trusted by the people. Preparation engages in all those issues. Preparation also means internal stability, peace and stability, in which that the leader doesn't have to worry about, this force or that force betraying the state and fighting against the state at the same time when the state is engaging in a war that has larger implications. So therefore, I think in all those elements that I just mentioned, the preparation was complete, comprehensive, and then consciously and deliberately carried out. And so I'll give you examples. For instance, in terms of weapons, the kind of weapons that they were able to acquire uh, were the kind of weapons that the Italians had. So therefore, in terms of modern weapons, the Italians were not superior to us. So that was critical. And second thing is, because the Italians came all the way from Italy to the Horn of Africa in search of their colonial pie or cake, you can even call it that, because they came crossing waters, oceans, crossing land. So we were in our home base. So therefore, the Ethiopians decided that the weapons were critical. And then secondly, they decided to overwhelm the Italians by having larger number than the Italians. Maximum you could go up to 35, 40,000. Ours is up to 200,000. Not all of them engage, all of them were soldiers or professional, regular trained soldiers, but at least those with weapons as well as those with traditional weapons like lances and the shields. So therefore, number was another critical factor in which that the Ethiopians felt that that was one thing that would help them to confront the Italians with large numbers. So that is taken care of. The weapons were taken care of. And logistics tradition, our tradition is that a soldier would go to battles having his own or her own food, uh, drinks. So, logistically, you have to be self-sufficient. So, in addition to being self-sufficient, it's the way, the whole campaign was organized. It was organized in such a way that there were sectors who are assigned to make sure that enough food was prepared and distributed among the fighters or supporters of the fighters. So in all aspects of what we call preparation, which is a critical factor, I think, as you pointed out, Emperor Menelik and the Empress Taitu did what they're supposed to do as leaders. And then at the same time, because of the tradition that we have at that time, the nobilities would have their own troops. And so all those troops were combined together for the last war, and then we can talk about the military strategy and tactics.
We'll come later on. What were the main strategies used by the Ethiopian forces which led to victory? Let's come to that point.
Very good. The main strategy that the Ethiopians took was to utilize both diplomacy and then if the diplomacy fails, to fight against the Italians. So in all cases, the Ethiopians were determined. They have decided that they're going to keep their country free. They're going to keep a free country. So therefore, the strategies I used was to make sure that the negotiation would continue while they do all the necessary preparation for the ultimate battle. I think it was after the disagreement that emerged as a result of the treaty that the two signed, which was called the Wichale Treaty. And then when that treaty, when they found a discrepancy, especially in Article 17, when they found discrepancy with that, then they said, we have to go to war. There is no other option that we just have to go to war. Once they decided, it was a matter of like deciding where to do the battle, how to do the battle. So therefore, for instance, Adwa was the final battle against the Italians. Prior to that, there were at least 6, 7 battles. And then in almost all instances, Ethiopians were victorious. Perhaps with the case of Kwatit and Sanafe, and Dabra Haila. These are, the pre-Adwa battles. So, and also the key for the victory and the key for the Ethiopians to prevail in that historic battle is that they are the ones who chose Adwa. Adwa was chosen by the Ethiopians for various reasons. One, as you pointed out earlier, the geographic terrain would favor a local fighter as opposed to a foreigner, because the Ethiopians were familiar with all the mountains that are out there. I call it a forest of mountains. And it's in a remarkable mountains. In fact, ultimately, when the Italians came to do the surprise attack on the day of March 1st in the morning, actually one division got lost in those mountains. And then, there were two, Inda, Kidana and Kidamarat, those are the names of the mountains. And they are supposed to go to Inda Kidana, but they ended up going to Kidana, which is in another location. So by the time they figure out the right place, it was late. And so therefore, they didn't get the kind of reinforcement that they were supposed to get from the 2nd Division and 3rd Division. You see, they had 3 lines. And then the right division, as well as a central division, were not able to provide support to the 1st Division that went all the way to the Ethiopian side and then carry out the surprise attack. So therefore, they confronted the Ethiopians singularly without getting any kind of additional support from the other divisions. So I think that together with the Ethiopians being ready, being prepared, they were ready because they got first-hand information that the fact, Italians have the habit of fighting by first building a fortress. And then they will get out of the fortress, fight, and they'll return back to the fortress. Or they put their artillery inside the fortress and then, attack Ethiopians. So what happened was that they were overwhelmed by a large number of Ethiopian troops, soldiers, fighters, supporters of the fighters in the form of Azmarioch, or in the form of those who are hitting the nagarit, the drum hitters. So all of them overwhelmed them, and so therefore I think the Ethiopians encircled. Ethiopians, when they fight the battlefield, they form what they call a crescent shape, a crescent moon shape, and then push, and encircle the enemy and then attack. You see, they had enough number, the right weapons, the moral position, the moral superior position, because they were defending their right to be free and they were defending their land. And then that's exactly also what the decree declared. You see, an enemy is coming from far away, to take away your wife, to take away your children, to take away your land, and then we shouldn't allow that, because if you don't have a country, if you don't have a nation, then you're no longer a person. No one would respect you. You would be reduced to a person who would be an enslaved person. So therefore, I think in a kind of way that motivated the people to kind of join the emperor and then say, like Yahweh, this is critical. They believed in the message and they decided to join the leader. And so therefore, there was a sense of unity, a very exceptional sense of unity, because we're talking about highly diversified society with both language differences, religious differences, and yet all of them understood that all those differences can be expressed, whether you agree or not, only if you have a free land, if your nation is free, You have the sovereignty over your territory and in your personality. So I think that has greatly motivated the Ethiopians to, once they were attacked, they kind of, counterattacked. And then that counterattack was decisive because Italians, as I pointed out to you, didn't get any kind of reinforcement and therefore decisively defeated by the Ethiopians. And then, by the way, the Ethiopians knew who the enemy was. They knew the Italians, they knew their firepower, they knew how they were organized in order to attack the Ethiopians. And then, so therefore, because it is a combination of both mercenaries and then, Italian forces, so the Ethiopians made their final decision was based on the fact that they knew the enemy very well. And then the same thing, in terms of not getting additional reinforcement was precisely because the forces who betrayed the Italians and joined the Ethiopians were participating in sabotaging all the elements that would allow the air forces to come and attack Ethiopians.
Wow. Okay, Professor, let's come to the diplomatic influence of the Battle of Adwa. How did the Battle of Adwa, which was concluded with the victory of Ethiopians, impacted the international standing and diplomatic relations of Ethiopia with the European powers?
Yeah.
How does the diplomacy reshape it? What impact does it have?
Very good. I think that's also one big lesson that we can learn from the Battle of Adwa. And that lesson is that Emperor Menelik knew that these foreigners, these Europeans, will not stop and will not stop. They would not be in a position to stop or to agree with him or to kind of sign peaceful treaties, sign treaties until they have full control of the Horn of Africa, until they put the whole Horn of Africa into a colonial system, turn them into their colonies. You see, that's their desire. So therefore, there were enormous diplomatic efforts, for the Ethiopians to say, we would compromise. Maybe you could have a portion of, like for instance, Eritrea, and yet be be at par with Italy or with England, having diplomatic relations, and then pursue economic or political or cultural development. But see, their agenda was an agenda of colonization, and then there was no exception. They wouldn't agree to make Ethiopia an exception to the rule, so they want to colonize the whole continent. So therefore, diplomatically speaking, actually, Emperor Menelik did an excellent job in terms of, one, having both skilled Ethiopian diplomats and foreigner diplomats like Antonelli was working for both Italy and in Ethiopia. He's a guy who was enjoying life by being a part of the palace community, and speaking fluent Amharic. So, Menelik took advantage of him. Menelik sent Antonelli and the other Ethiopian diplomats to Europe to explain to them that the Ethiopian cause is a just cause, that Ethiopia has this ancient tradition, this long history, and then in that history, Ethiopia always existed and continued to exist as a free country, as a free nation. So they were able to kind of impart that among the Europeans. So therefore, when the victory came, it didn't turn into a kind of, ugly campaign saying that this uncivilized, barbaric, people shouldn't have that kind of victory. So therefore, the Europeans didn't mobilize against us. Rather, they started to have admiration. They have admiration to the rulers, to Menelik, to Taitu, to Balcha, to all those heroes who, planned a kind of approach that involved both diplomatic approach and then ultimately the war was very much designed in such a way that victory was assured.
Good. Let's come to the composition of Ethiopian army and its organization during the war. How do you, as a historian, how do you elaborate it? What do you say in this regard?
Well, see, this is very important. Ethiopian history is enveloped with lots of battles and lots of wars. You see, you can't become an emperor in our country uh, unless you are able to force all the nobilities to pay tribute to you. So we have kings like King of Jimma, Kafa, or King of Walaita, or King of Walaga. But all those kings have to pay tributes to the King of Kings. And then for you to be able to acquire that position, it's usually obtained by war. You have to be by far the most unchallenged ruler. And so those guys, you're being the most powerful is based on the fact that you are able to force others to pay tribute to you. So those kind of structure, governmental structure or power structure, means that we have to go through several battles. So those battles helped, the soldiers that you are asking me, to be prepared, to be ready, to be battle hardened, in such a way that when an outside enemy come, that they don't have they have the skills, they have the experience, and then they have the gut and the determination to fight and win. And so I think that's also very critical. That warrior tradition that we have also was instrumental in terms of ultimately organizing these soldiers. By the way, our approach is holistic when we fight. It's holistic. Holistic means that people who are providing the logistics are as well as people who are trying to motivate the soldiers, the horsemen, as well as the footed soldier, all of them are together, in terms of approaching the battlefield, So therefore, but they know how to, like the formation in terms of the military operation, the formation is based on the terrain, and it's based on for the land. If it is too mountainous, you can't form the like the three lines, for instance. We usually form, as I pointed out to you, it's a crescent formation. The crescent means the center part has most of the soldiers. So what you want to do is to really overwhelm the enemy as fast as possible. So if you can't form three formations, then you would pull together into one and then be able to kind of quickly confront the enemy until you are able to kind of overwhelm that enemy.
Thank you. Viewers, you are still watching AMN Plus Talk to Addis program with me, your host Abdullah Burhani. We are having a nice stay with Professor Ayala Bakari, dwelling on the issue of the Battle of Adwa, which is the African victory. And the Battle of Adwa is being celebrated for 129th time here in Ethiopia with the theme of the victory of all black people. So we are dwelling on this issue. Don't go. Do stay with us. We'll be back. Okay, Professor, we're back. The next one is what role did Ethiopian women, including Empress Taitu, played in the victorious result of the battle? What were the role of women?
Very good question.
And how can we just really learn, even these days we have to capacity Ethiopian women. What can you say in this regard?
Well, that's a very good question. I think the term holistic
Yeah.
means that everybody participates. When we go to war, the war is not restricted only to men. And see, our women also fight in addition to, you know, playing a critical role of logistics, but they've been logistic providers, but they were also at the battlefield, you know, even though not their number might not be as big as many as the main part. But I'll give you examples. There are two critical elements where women played a critical role in the battle of at the Battle of Adwa. The first one was at Makale. You see, as I pointed out to you earlier, there were battles prior to the Battle of Adwa. The Battle of Adwa was the final, the one that kind of made the decisive decision, the very final decision in terms of the war. But if you take into consideration the Battle of Ambalage, and then at least the main ones, and then the Battle of Makale, so it's in the Inda Jesus, Battle of Inda Jesus Makale. At Ambalage, one of the generals, his name is Fitaurari Gabayo, he was not even patient enough to wait to get the orders from emperor. The emperor was behind. These are like what you call front soldiers. You know, they usually scout the area, make sure that there is no enemy hiding along the routes that you are following to go to Adwa. So Italians formed a fortress at Ambalage. Ambalage is like, I think, the second tallest mountain. Amba means mountain. I think it's a Giz word. Yeah. So they built a fortress there. And then their attempt was to kind of wait for the Ethiopians to come and then attack them. So Fitaurari Gabayo, who was a close friend, a very intimate friend of Emperor Menelik, noticed that they were camping at Ambalagi. So he didn't wait for the order to come from Emperor Menelik. Him and Ras Makonnen, who was the father of Emperor Haile Selassie, both of them decided to attack